There's one thing I've found consistently over many years of training. Most people, even many advanced users, don't know efficient methods of finding their files, moving or copying files from one place to another, creating folders, or even understanding where things go. Windows 8 has some new tools to help you with all that, and I'll also show you some shortcuts that have been around for several versions that you might not know about. The main tool to use for managing your files is the File Explorer, which used to be called Windows Explorer. But don't get that confused with the Microsoft Internet Explorer web browser. Under the hood, they share a lot of program code, but they're really meant for different purposes. Let me start you off with how to run the File Explorer.
I'll show you three ways of starting Explorer. One way is simply roll the mouse over the lower left corner of the screen, click the right mouse button, and down here towards the bottom you can click File Explorer. We'll just click on the background, get rid of that menu. Another way is, let's go to the desktop. Right down here on the taskbar, you can click that, and that will also start Explorer. And my favorite way is, of course, keyboard shortcut, and that is Windows key E. So if you hold down the Windows logo key on your keyboard and press E for Explorer, that will start it up. So whichever one of those three methods you want is fine, and sometimes I use one and sometimes I use another. So let's take a look at what's going on here. We have a left pane and we have a right pane. We also have some tabs across the top, and we have some breadcrumbs. And we also have a couple of icons up here. These icons up here, they call that the Quick Access Toolbar, the CAT. The general idea is whatever you have selected here in the left pane, the contents you'll see in the right pane. So right now, by default, the computer is selected, so we see everything that's in the computer. And keep in mind, what I have on my screen may be somewhat different from what you have on yours. I have some additional drives that you may not have. You may have some drives that I don't have. Now over here under Computer, you can see Local Disk C. And by default, your main hard drive, the hard drive that contains the Windows operating system, is on drive C. And you can even see here, there's like a little Windows logo. That's telling us that that's the hard drive that Windows is booting from. I also have drive D and drive E. Those are just additional hard drives. And this Corsair here, that's an external drive. That's a flash drive, and we'll deal with that a little bit later on. So also in the main screen, we can see the same thing. Here's the Windows drive. Here's just an additional hard drive. Here's an additional hard drive. Here's a CD, DVD, ROM that's also in the machine. And there's that flash drive that's plugged in. You can probably guess that Windows will accommodate up to 26 drives at a time, simply lettered A to Z. There are probably folders on these hard drives, and we'll talk about files and folders in a little bit. There are probably folders that you'll need to get to often, and rather than having to hunt for them, Windows gives us this capability of favorites. So for example, you see I have on my desktop Mozilla Firefox, web browser, and I have our project files. So when I click over here on desktop, I can see there's Firefox, there's a project files, there's a recycle bin that you see up here on the left, and there's a few other things that really aren't showing up on the desktop, but they kind of live on the desktop anyway. We also have under favorites downloads. So if you download files from somewhere on the web, your web browsers will typically put them in the downloads folder. Recent places, simply recent folders that you've accessed. I'll just click that, and I can see that I've recently been in the downloads folder, and my documents and pictures over here, I was recently in there. SkyDrive, as we've talked about elsewhere in the course, is a free storage area in the cloud that Microsoft makes available to you. It's free, and when you register on there, they give you a little piece of software that if you want, you can download and install it, and it'll put SkyDrive right here as though it's a folder on your computer. Now, you don't have to use that to use SkyDrive, but I just find it's more convenient. And over here we have libraries. You notice there's 4 of them, and we can configure this, and later on in this chapter we'll talk about libraries. And the general idea is, rather than worrying about the name and location of a particular folder that you have files in, you can simply think of it as, oh, here's where I have a bunch of documents, or here's where I have a bunch of pictures, and let Windows figure out where all of those items are. Here's a home group, and also elsewhere in this course we talked about creating a home group, so that's just sitting there. And then we have a network. And showing up in the network is simply the name of my computer that's there, and you could ignore that for now. I tend to think of these hard drives like file cabinets. And when you think of a file cabinet, what do you have? It's basically a box, and you've divided up the box into maybe 2 drawers or 3 drawers, what have you. And in each drawer, maybe you have hanging folders, and in each one, maybe you have subfolders in there. So it's kind of this way of organizing things. And hard drives are the same way. So let's take a look, for example, drive C. Notice, by the way, when I roll the mouse over the left pane, we see these little arrows show up. And these are, I don't know, I call them twirly arrows. Let's take a look at drive C. When I put my mouse pointer on this little arrow here and I click, you see it twirls open. And now I can see the subfolders on here. Now some of them, like program files, for example, that has another twirly arrow. This one here, Snagit, and that's a screen capture utility. You notice that there is no little arrow. So that's how I know that, like program files and temp and users, those folders have subfolders in them, but perflogs and Snagit, those don't have subfolders in them. Now they may have files. I'll just click on Snagit, and I can see there's some info, and I simply install that on this computer to write some documentation. Or I'll go to Windows, and I can see here's a whole bunch of folders. And in general, you really don't want to monkey around with the Windows folder. Now, when you're ready to collapse it, you don't need to see all this stuff. You could click on the arrow again, and you see it's been kind of shaded, and now it's collapsed. And now if I click on drive C by itself, now I see just the top level folders. And the same for any of these other folders as well. And sometimes you may have folders without anything in them. So for example, if I click the videos folder, there's nothing there. If I click on music, there's nothing there. But you notice though that some of these, like when I click on music, I have an additional tab showing up. Now because it's a library, I have this sub-tab for library tools. And because it's music, I have this other tab here for music tools. So that's kind of context sensitive. Now also in here, this is generally called the address bar. You see that I'm in the music folder, and that's telling me what's over here. And because you see over here the music folder is inside the main libraries category, that's showing me up here as well. Music is inside libraries. So if I click on libraries here, I can see these 4 libraries that you see here. Let's go back to music. And the same thing up here. If I'm on the music folder, and up here I click on libraries, I go back the same way. So you have several different ways of navigating through Explorer. And just a few more things. You can put your mouse pointer on the, let's say, corner. I'll just have the mouse pointer in the lower right corner, and I can move around so I can make this window smaller or larger. Or if I put my mouse pointer on the right edge, I can drag left to right on the bottom edge, down or up. That's just a general Windows thing. And over here, when I put my mouse pointer, it may be a little hard to see, but right between the left pane and the right pane, you see I have that 2-headed arrow? That lets me reallocate the space between how much space is on the left side and how much space is on the right side. So now that you understand some of the basics of Windows File Explorer, in the rest of this chapter, we'll go and put it to some good use.